Hi, this is Michael Buffer, and welcome to the BoxHard Podcast.
Hello, everyone. This is Mikey Garcia.
Yo, it's your boy, the odd guy himself, Malik King Scott.
Hi, I'm Charlie Edwards.
This is Fast Eddie Chambers, and you're listening to the BoxHard Podcast with my main man, Joey Coastman.
Hello everybody and welcome to episode 111 of the BoxHard Podcast. I'm your host Joey Coastman, episode 111. Unfortunately, Ayaz couldn't be with me this week. Once again, he's been kept out of the show due to some personal issues outside of the ring or the studio or whatever you want to call it. But we are joined by Mariam, who is a lady that knows her boxing, really does know her boxing down to a T, so she is the replacement this week. Mariam, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Good, thank you. How are you?
Very good, very good. I am very, very good. Right, let's dive straight into part one. Part one, of course, being the review part of the show where we talk about the fights from last week. I'm going to start over in the Oberhausen in Germany. I've got no idea if I'm pronouncing that right, but I'm just going to get away with it because nobody's here to correct me, to be honest. What I will say, Ryan Hatton on the undercard got a KO in round one. I mean, Ryan Hatton now moves to 2-0. His opponent wasn't really up to much. A record of 14-22 going in with one draw. Light work there for Ryan Hatton. Looked pretty good, but I mean, you can't really take too much from that. It was what it was. Also on that bill, the main event, of course, for the vacant WBA World Heavyweight title, the regular version. This I think once upon a time belonged to Luis Ortiz, if I'm not mistaken. Anyways, Manny Char in one corner. Manuel Char 30-4 took on Alexander Ustinov 34-1. Obviously, as far as I knew, I think Frank Warren had something to do with Ustinov, and I'm not quite sure what's gone on now because I don't think he was over there for it, but Box Nation picked it up at the very last minute, so I did watch the fight. The fight was, I mean, put it this way, if somebody tied me up and and wanted information out of me and just put that on, I think I'd probably tell them everything I knew. It was a real boring fight. It really was. Very scrappy stuff from both guys. Manny Char, I don't even know how he even got in contention for fighting for a title. Ustinov touched down in round 8. He just tired after about 3-4 rounds. He really looked awful. Ustinov in some of his previous fights has looked pretty good taking guys out, but here he just looked absolutely awful. In that 8th round, by the way, it was a real peach of a left hook thrown by Manuel Char. It dropped Ustinov and it also gave him a nasty gash underneath the eye. It seemed to be like right on the cheekbone, but no, a real great left hook. Ustinov did pretty well to get up, but ultimately he lost a unanimous decision over 12 rounds. So believe it or not, Manuel Char 31-4 now inside 35 fights. He's the new regular WBA World Heavyweight Champion, so I'm sure people will be chomping at the bit to fight him. Moving over now to the Let's just take a moment to try and pronounce this. This is at the Surinari Camp Stadium in a place called Nakhon Ratchasima, which is in Thailand. One fight to mention on this bill, a guy called Chayaphon Moonsri. He's actually 48-0. Well, he was 48-0. He's now 49-0. He manages to level out or draw or tie with the Rocky Marciano record, 49-0. He's equaled that here, and he defended successfully his WBC World Minimum Weight World title. This was against a guy called Tatsuya Fukuhara, who was 19-5 with 6 draws, now 19-6 with 6 draws. A unanimous decision over 12 rounds there. Some people on Twitter I didn't actually watch the fight, but some people were saying it was quite a close fight, but I think looking at the scorecards it was quite wide. But anyway, if this guy's got any kind of chance of overtaking Mayweather's 50-0, I'm all for it. So all the very best to Chayaphon Moonsri, now 49-0. Moving over now to the Doncaster Dome in Doncaster, Yorkshire, United Kingdom. This one was a Steffi Ball promotion card. There's a couple fights to mention on this one. Curtis Woodhouse, he moved to win number 24. He's got 7 losses as well. It was a points win over 6 rounds against journeyman Lewis Van Poach, who's now 7-56 with 1 draw. On the main event here, Maxi Hughes, 17-3 with 2 draws, took on Danny Cassius Connor. Danny Cassius Connor's a man that, I think I said it on last week's show, he's been kind of chasing a big fight, just a fight of note for quite a while now, and he got it here. He's been really interacting with all types of people on Twitter. I think he's turned into a little bit of a wind-up merchant sometimes. But anyways, I wanted him to do well, but unfortunately it wasn't to be for Danny Cassius Connor. He was down early in the second round. He was also down again in the fourth round, and his corner threw in the towel in that fourth round. So a TKO there for Maxi Hughes. He's now 18-3 with 2 draws. I think Danny Cassius Connor is going to take some time out. I think he's going to enjoy Christmas, and I'm sure he said something like, he was going to just kind of take a step back just to kind of evaluate things and make a decision on if he's going to continue with boxing or not. So all the very best to Danny Cassius Connor. He's, he seems like a decent guy, so I wish him all the very best with whichever choice, whichever life choice he decides to come up with. All the very best to him. Moving over now to the Mohegan Sun Casino in Connecticut, USA. One fight to mention on this bill, we talked about it just briefly last week, myself and Eddie Chambers, because Eddie Chambers took this guy on. In one corner, Tabiso Machunu, 18-3. He's the guy that beat Eddie Chambers when Eddie Chambers moved down to cruiserweight a couple years back. Machunu took on a guy, he's a southpaw, called Konstantin Bejenaru, who was 12-0. We didn't really know too much about him. I think he's from... it's slipped me now, but he's from, I think he may be from Belarus or something like that. Anyway, we didn't know much about him, but he put Machunu down in round 7. We knew that he was the WBC Continental America's Cruiserweight Champion. We also knew that he was the WBC International Cruiserweight Champion, but ultimately he picked up a unanimous decision over 10 rounds and defended both of his belts successfully. He's now 13-0, so that may be a name to look out for there, Konstantin Bejenaru. Moving over now to the Madison Square Garden Theatre in New York City, United States. Really and truly, this was the bill of the weekend. It was shown on Sky. I think it started at 3 a.m. We saw 3 high-level fights. I'm going to start with the Jason Sosa fight. And, on last week's show, I was saying that Yuriorkis Gamboa was, he was placed into that fight as a little bit of a late replacement. I think he maybe had about 2 to 3 weeks, somewhere in between of that. And I thought that for Jason Sosa to, readjust to somebody like Gamboa, despite Gamboa being over the hill, not looking great for a few years now, if we're being honest, I did kind of think it was going to be a little bit difficult, a little bit of a harder task than some may have thought. Yeah, and it seemed to be that. I mean, I didn't quite agree with the final scorecards, but anyway, let's talk about the records going in. Jason Sosa 20-2 with 4 draws. Yuriorkis Gamboa 27-2. Gamboa was actually down in round 7, and he also lost a point for holding in round 10 because he got really tired during the fight. The fight wasn't pretty. It was a little bit scrappy at times. I really felt... in fact, I probably would go as far to say as I actually felt Sosa got robbed. And I don't say that when things were really close and it could have gone either way. I think it was a clear win for Sosa, really. I think one of the scorecards in particular was really, really wide. It was just shocking. And actually, we predicted this fight on last week's show. I said I thought that Sosa would win on points. The listeners went with Sosa to win by knockout in the end. And Ayaz, who I don't even think really gave the fight much thought, he actually said that Gamboa would win on points, and boy oh boy, the luck strikes again for Ayaz. He ended up picking up a point there on the prediction league. But no, for me, I think that Sosa definitely won that fight, and unfortunately, where does he really go from here? I think both guys just briefly missed the weight as well, if I'm not mistaken. So really bad times there for that fight, and for Jason Sosa in particular. Gamboa kind of reignites his career a little bit. I suppose he'll probably get a big fight on the back of this undeserved win, but it is what it is. Mariam, did you manage to catch any of this fight at all, Sosa and Gamboa? If so, what did you think of it?
Yeah, I watched that one. I mean, I quite like Sosa. I think he's an exciting fighter. Obviously, he's not the best fighter. He's certainly not elite in my opinion, but I think he's definitely a good fighter. He shows a lot of heart. I mean, we saw that in the Lomachenko fight. And I do think that he edged it in this one. I feel like he was more aggressive, he was more effective. And I felt like in the second half of this fight especially, you saw Gamboa kind of slow down a bit. I feel like he wasn't that effective. I mean, when you take that into account, plus the knockdown, I feel like he really had no choice but to give it to Sosa. So, to me it was, I don't want to go so far as to call it a robbery, but I think it was an unfair decision.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I mean, like I say, I think he probably won the fight. If we don't even talk about the 2 10-8 rounds, because obviously there was a point taken off in the 10th and also the knockdown, I think Sosa got the better of the fight anyway. So I was pretty surprised to see a majority decision at the end of 10 rounds in favour for Gamboa there. So maybe if it was a 12-rounder, Sosa would have had a little bit more luck on his side. Also on this bill, Sullivan Barrera 20-1 took on Felix Valera 15-1. It started out as a really good fight. Both fighters were down in round 1. Sullivan Barrera's been down a few times. He touches the deck sometimes, gets up and wins. And ultimately he did this. It was a unanimous decision over 10 rounds. Valera was also deducted 1 point for low blows in round 3. He was also deducted a point in round 6 and round 8. Barrera was deducted a point for low blows in round 9. So there was a lot of points being took off left, right and centre. But, I mean, I don't know, this fight, I mean, like I said, it started off okay, but I think there was a lot of, times where either fighter kind of took their eye off the ball a little bit, I think. Took their eye off what was going on. And like I said, it did get a little bit scrappy. It did get a little bit silly. The referee was probably a little bit harsh on Valera, I felt. And I think that the scorecards were probably a little bit wider than what I would have had it. But like I say, it was quite hard to score with all the points being took off here, there and everywhere. But anyways, Sullivan Barrera marches on. He's now 21-1. He's quite a contender, I suppose, at light heavyweight. I'd like to see him in against some of the bigger names. But credit to Felix Valera. He put a decent performance in there, but it wasn't meant to be for him. He's now 15-2. Again, he's only lost to good fighters, so I'm sure he can bounce back in some kind of good fight, hopefully not too far down the line. And now the main event, the return of the crusher, Sergey Kovalev, 30-2 with 1 draw going in against Vyacheslav Shabransky, 19-1. That 1 loss coming to Sullivan Barrera, who we just talked about there. The vacant IBA light heavyweight title was on the line, and also the vacant WBO world light heavyweight title was on the line as well. So 2 belts there, one of course being recognised as one of the 4 major governing body belts. How can I talk about this? I mean, for me, I've always kind of thought that to be the man, you've got to beat the man. I think that Andre Ward, he clearly showed that he was the man until he decided to hang up the gloves. So I think I've kind of given the title back, like I don't know what you'd call it, the kind of inverted commas title, if you like, the real champion. I've kind of given that status now back to Kovalev. That may be controversial, but that's the way I see it. And I think that, for me, I mean, I think he's probably the man, and he got in there against Shabransky. I thought that Shabransky may be able to give him a few rounds, especially Kovalev coming off of 2 losses, not really looking good. Some people saying, he doesn't like it to the body. Some people saying that he's got old all of a sudden, but he really kind of showed us, what he can be about when he's completely and 100% focused on the job. He really is a bit of a wrecking ball. He's obviously linked up with a new trainer now. It was going to be interesting to see how that would go, but we didn't really get to see too much of that because there was only one minute break between the 2 rounds. It only went 2 rounds. It was a TKO in round 2, and it was a little bit of a flashback of of the kind of Kovalev that we're used to seeing really from a few years ago. But to me, he looked very good, and once again he proved to me anyway that he is the man at 175. What did you think of that fight, Mariam? Great fight.
I agree. I mean, I love Kovalev. I think that, from the beginning when he really stepped out onto the American scene, I feel like he's just shown repeatedly that he has the ability, he has the power to be at that elite level at light heavyweight. And I feel like, he's had a bit of an unfair sweep of luck, I guess you could say, with the past 2 fights. Obviously, the first fight, as we all know, was, a robbery. Well, in my opinion, it was definitely a robbery. And I know that 80% of the boxing community agree. And obviously in the second fight, that had its own complications, despite Andre Ward's good performance. And I feel that, for a lot of people to discredit Kovalev coming into this fight, saying, oh, he's past it, he was exposed with these fights, he's not elite. I think that was just proven to be bull, really. He showed that he's got the power. He showed he's got that skill. The fact that he took a guy like Shavansky out. Obviously, Shavansky wasn't undefeated, but people spoke about him as one of the next things at light heavyweight. So I think the fact that Kovalev showed what he was capable of within only 2 rounds, I think that just means that his next step has to be. I mean, in an ideal world, we'd all love it to be Stevenson, even though the chances of that happening are next to nothing. But I think that he's shown that he is at that top level. And, I know that the belts say differently because obviously Stevenson is currently holding that WBC belt hostage. But, if he was to get that, and I definitely think that he would beat Stevenson if that fight was to happen, just for clarification, I think that he would beat Stevenson, and I think he cements his reign at the top of that division without a doubt.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, it was a little bit of a typical kind of Kovalev performance. He came back with a bang. He steamrolled Shavansky, really. There was actually some good odds for a knockout in the first 3 rounds. I wasn't too sure it was going to end that quickly, but, I wish I jumped on those odds now. But no, typical Kovalev performance, looked as good as ever, really. And, if Andre Ward remains retired, I think he's the best at 175. When you think about some of these names, I was listening to, someone talk boxing the other day, and they were kind of reeling off all these names at 175. There's so many good fighters at 175. It's really a division that I feel sometimes gets neglected. You've got the likes of, obviously at the very top of the tree, you've got the likes of Kovalev, Stevenson, as you mentioned. You've got Gvozdyk, you've got Bivol coming through now. You've got Sullivan,
Jack.
Barrera's there. Go on.
Badu
Jack's there again. Someone
obviously
I'm really excited to see.
But yeah, a lot of people, they've got quite high hopes for him, given what he's achieved so far.
Yeah, you've got what's that other guy? Beterbiev. Yep, I was just thinking of him. You got him. I know that these guys are a little bit long in the tooth, but also you've got the likes of I think Lucian Bute's up there now. I think he's there. I know he's a little bit past it, but you've also got Jean Pascal's there. These are real tests for guys like some of the emerging guys coming through, like Alida Alvarez is there. I mean, he's looking for a big fight. Obviously, I'd like to see Anthony Yarde in some of these fights at one point, but they're all just brilliant names. But yeah, Badu Jack, he may prove to be the best of the lot. There's so many good fights that can be made. I'm just really excited for it, really. So it really is a thrilling division. Right, anyways.
Hold on. Who do you want to see Kovalev fight next?
Well,
in an ideal world,
I think they're talking about the Barrera fight, but in an ideal world, it's got to be Stevenson, hasn't it? I think he's the closest to the top, despite what you may think about him. But then again, I'm also hearing that the fight is all but done between Badu Jack and Stevenson for some time in January.
Really?
So maybe. Yeah, that's a little bit of a rumour there, yeah.
Right, because I heard a rumour about Stevenson and Alvarez, which I thought was a cop-out on Stevenson's half. But I'd be more looking forward to that Badu Jack fight. I think that's a good fight if obviously the Kovalev fight doesn't happen.
Yeah, because I'm sure that he had to pay Alvarez some step-aside money so that he could defend his title last time against... who did he defend it against? I can't even remember now.
Oh, was it Fonfara?
I think it was Fonfara.
That was his last fight, I think. Stevenson's last fight.
Yeah, so I'm sure he had to pay Alvarez some step-aside money for that. So I don't think he wants to run to that. I think Alvarez gives him a lot of issues, really. I think Alvarez is quite good, but yeah, there's a lot of fights. But yeah, I think aside from. I mean, even Badu Jack and Kovalev would be a good fight. I mean, you can mix these guys around in any way, and it's it makes for some brilliant matches. But yeah, leaving that card alone, moving over now to Monday of this week. That was, of course, Monday the 27th of November. There was a couple of fights to mention that happened in Europe. Moving over to Russia, there was a heavyweight clash. A guy called Sergei Kuzmin. I've never heard of him, but he's 11-0. He was fighting for the vacant WBC International Heavyweight title against, I suppose, it's tricky because I always go to say he's a veteran, but really he's only had 26 fights. Amir Mansour. Anyway, Amir Mansour at the ripe age of 45 got in there. It was a 12-rounder and it ended up being a draw. Like I say, I didn't see the fight. I don't think many people did. But, Just one little fight to mention there. Amir Mansour, that's his second draw now. He's 23-2 with 2 draws. The WBC International Heavyweight title remains vacant, and Sergey Kuzmin picks up his first career minor blemish. He's 11-0. He's still undefeated, but he's got the 1 draw. Now moving over to the final bill to mention from last week, or this week we should say, but you know what I mean. At the Grange at St Paul's Hotel in the City of London, United Kingdom. Couple fights to mention on this bill. It was a Frank Warren show. It was, under the radar a little bit here. Just a couple of fights on the bill in total. Lerone Richards, the sniper, he moved to 10-0. He picked up the vacant WBO European super middleweight title against a guy called Reese Pagan, who was 14-4, now 14-5. A points win there for Lerone Richards over 10. And the brother of Charlie Edwards, his younger brother Sonny Edwards, he moved to 6-0, and he also picked up the vacant WBO European Super Flyweight title. So 2 WBO European titles on the line on that show. Both were vacant and both were won by the home fighter. So all the very best there to Sonny Edwards. I'm pleased for him. It looks like he's moved up to Super Flyweight now. So yeah, that's interesting. I'm a little bit surprised by that. I think that's the same weight class as Charlie Edwards. So both brothers at the same weight there. And by the way, Sonny Edwards defeated the previously undefeated Ross Murray, who was 6-0. And Sonny Edwards, sometimes he gets knocked a little bit for not really having the power. Well, he recorded a TKO in round 4. So all the very best to Sonny Edwards. He's a good guy. Anyway, that's it for the reviewing. Before we end part 1, there's one last thing to do, and that, of course, is to welcome our first guest. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the current IBF Featherweight World Champion, Mr. Lee Selby. Lee, welcome back on the show, my friend.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
It's always a pleasure, my friend. It's always a pleasure. So, Lee, I'm going to open up this interview with a couple of facts about your career. I actually tweeted these the other day. The whole thing ended up being retweeted and liked loads of times. So what I basically wrote was the story of Lee Selby's career. Of course, you've only lost the 1 fight. It was a 4-rounder 8.5 years ago. Since then, you've won the Welsh area title, the Celtic title, the British title, the Commonwealth title, and the European title, all by knockout. You've taken the undefeated records, of course, of Stephen Smith. We all know him very well. Virial Simeon, who just gave Scott Quigg a hard fight. Corey McConnell, Ryan Walsh, Joel Bronker, and of course Evgeny Gradovich, in which you took his world title. Since then, you've defended your title 3 times successfully. You're currently the 4th longest reigning Welsh world champion in history, just behind Joe Calzaghe, Jimmy Wilde, and Freddie Welsh. All I can say is, wow, my friend, congrats.
Thank you. You missed a few out. I won the WBC International title twice as well, beating 2 champions. They were both champions at the time, took their titles. And I also won boxing, won in 2 eliminators for the world title. Hey. So it's pretty impressive resume for such a short amount of fights, little amount of fights.
Unbelievable stuff. When I posted it up, a lot of people were saying he's the best British boxer right now. He just doesn't get the credit, It's amazing stats, my friend. It's amazing stats. So, Lee, we last spoke the week before your last fight against Jonathan Barros. I remember at the time we had Mikey Garcia on the show. He gave a little bit of advice. He said to you, that you could probably outbox this guy, but he was no easy foe. However, when you got in there, you did make him look a little bit like an easy foe. You, of course, dropped him in the 12th round. How did you assess that performance?
I thought it was a decent performance, against a good champion, a former world champion, a good fighter, very experienced guy. Been in there with the best and only being beat by the best. And it was a decent display. Boxed well under orders, behind the jab. Scored the knockdown. Really should have pressed on a little bit sooner and got the stoppage, but it was in the last round the bell went. But overall, it was a good fight, a good laden fight, and another win.
Absolutely. Now, obviously, a couple of days before the fight, some shocking news broke. Your mother sadly passed away, very sadly passed away. Yeah. Many people, including myself, were quite surprised that you even went through with the fight, because as we all know, boxing is such a mental task. You've got to have some serious mental toughness, and you showed that. How difficult was it to almost kind of put your feelings on hold for the duration of the fight and focus on the task at hand?
It was very difficult. I got the call early hours it must be in the Wednesday morning, early hours Thursday morning. My brother and my sister on the phone crying, I gotta come home, I can't fight. You give me the bad news. But after that call, then I just switched off my phone. My team come in the morning saying if we respect your decision, whatever you want to do. If you don't want to fight, we understand. That I just said, listen, just don't mention it again. Don't want to hear nothing about it until we get home. So I blanked it up my system. Got the job done and then grieved afterwards.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, you really demonstrated some mental toughness there. It was, especially in a fight of that magnitude as well. I mean, a lot of people wouldn't have been able to do that. And with your mum, Lee, was she ill for a while? What actually happened, if you don't mind me asking?
She wasn't ill at all.
Oh,
Still,
really?
no, clear explanation of why she's there.
Jesus. Well, like I say, may she rest in peace, my friend. I know that there's never a good time, to pass away. But I'm glad at least that she got to see her son become champion of the world. One son.
Following that, my granddad passed away, and about 10 days later.
Oh,
so
boy.
Been a good.
Boy, oh boy. So anyways, moving on to some positive stuff. Your next fight will be shown on Box Nation and BT Sports. You've signed some kind of deal with Frank Warren. Are you able to tell us, the aspects of this deal, what kind of deal it is, if it's a fight by fight thing or what?
Doing this fight next month, and my management team, the Sani guys, are in talks, negotiating with Frank Warren.
Okay. And you'll be defending your world title against Eduardo Ramirez on December the 9th at the Copper Box. Have you been to the Copper Box before, Lee?
I've never been there before, no. I've never watched a fight there. I've never boxed there.
Yeah.
So it's a new for me.
Yeah, it's a nice venue. There's not really a bad seat in the house. Very modern. I quite like the place. But anyway, your opponent Eduardo Ramirez. What do you know about him? Obviously, he's another undefeated fighter. His record's 20-0 with 3 draws. It seems like, Lee, you've took on quite a few guys recently who haven't really got the big name, but they come with a massive threat level.
Actually, they're all good fighters. This guy Ramirez, he's unbeaten. He comes from a good stable. I've boxed Fernando Montiel. He's in the same gym, so they sort of know me. And he's unbeaten. He's relatively unknown. He's ranked highly by the IBF. And he's a Mexican fighter. Come forward. He can box a bit, southpaw. So he's young, hungry. It should be a good fight.
Yeah, it sounds like it will be. And how important will it be, Lee, to get this win? I know that obviously getting the win's always vital, but just to close out the year on a high, obviously it's been a bad luck year for you, really, with the fight falling through in Las Vegas, your mum there, your grandfather as well, as you mentioned.
Yeah, well, I've never had no luck in anything. Boxing, my career, life in general, no like true solid luck. But I just stay focused. It'd be nice to get another win now before the end of the year, and then go into 2018 with the hopes of it being the biggest year of my career. Providing I get through this now next month, I got a big fight with Josh Warrington early next year, and then we could maybe do the Frampton fight. He's also with Frank Warren, and then look towards a unification fight towards the end of the year.
Yeah, because 2 weeks ago we had Oscar Valdez on the show, and he said that. Well, I asked him this question. I basically said to him, out of all the Brits, who would you rather fight? And he said he would much prefer to fight you. He called you out in probably the most politest way I've ever seen anybody call anyone out.
Yeah.
But he basically said it's simply because you got a title. But he did go on to say that he thinks that he's got more chance ending up with a Carl Frampton fight than yourself. I'm not quite sure why. But anyways, have you got your eyes set on Oscar at all?
I'm happy to fight, providing I get through those fights I just mentioned. I'm happy to fight any champion. I've sparred quite a few rounds with Oscar Valdez. We had some great sparring, great work, and it makes for a very, very good and entertaining fight between us two.
Yeah, that certainly would be a good fight. And also, I like to ask about your brother. Every time I speak to him, I like to ask him about you. What's next for Andrew?
I'm not too sure. I know he's won a couple of eliminators, WBC world title eliminators, in his last 2 fights. So he's knocking on the door for a world title fight, I think.
No rumoured date at all at the moment?
Date at the moment. And like, to be honest, he like the lost my mother a lot worse than I have.
Yeah.
So he's still grieving the loss of our mother, and hopefully he can get back on it now next year and get a fight early part of next year.
Yeah, God willing. Bless him. All right, and just before I let you go, Lee, any kind of message that you want to send out to anybody that may be listening at all? Take it away.
Just thank you to all the fans for their continued support and following me, and I'm hoping to bring you those big fights in 2018.
Absolutely. Okay, Lee, listen, it's always a pleasure speaking with you, my friend. You know that. Best of luck for December 9th, and we'll catch up sometime after, I'm sure.
Thank you.
Okay, now it's time for part 2 on this week's show. This part, of course, the preview part. But just before we get into that, we want to talk about the latest news. Usually, Ayaz sends me a list of the news, so I'm just going to try my best to remember what's kind of gone on in the last couple of days. Off the top of my head, Jeff Horn's fight against our very own Gary Corcoran will be shown live on Box Nation. That one is going to be on the... I think it's the... Oh my God, is it? I think it's the 13th of December, that one. I think it's Wednesday. It's the same night as the Katie Taylor fight, which is going to be at York Hall. But yeah, it's obviously over in Australia. So yeah, that's going to be on Box Nation. I expected that to happen. Also, Tyson Fury has signed a promotional contract with MTK Global, also known as Mac the Knife Global, formerly MGM Marbella, Matthew Macklin's outfit. I'm not quite sure actually if it is a promotional contract. I think it's some kind of advisory thing, but you know, it's pretty hard these days to kind of tell the difference between those two things. But if it means that Tyson Fury is going to be back in the ring sooner, then you know, I'm all for that, of course. You know, we all want to see the big man back in the ring. Mariam, have you got any topics or anything that I may have left out that's just kind of arisen in the last couple of days that's interesting at all to mention?
No, you probably talked about it in the last podcast, but obviously the news that Hey Value has been postponed.
Yeah.
Obviously that's just a bummer for all boxing fans. But obviously the Tyson Fury news, you know, looking that he's making steps towards getting back in the ring, that's obviously good boxing news for every fan out there. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah, I think that really pretty much is it. I mean, when Ayaz is on, he reels off the news like, I mean, I call him the Trevor McDonald of boxing. I don't think he likes that name, but he's got it all, but I just don't. So yeah, that's all the news. That's a little piece of news that we've got for you. Moving over now to the previewing. There's a fight later on today which is happening at the Prince Regent Hotel in Chigwell, Essex. This is an Andy Ayling from Wham Boxing show. One fight to mention on the bill, Harley Ben. He's 2-0. He's in a 4-rounder. His opponent yet to be announced. I just thought we'd throw that out there. Of course, Harley Ben, son of Nigel Ben and half-brother to Conor Ben. Unbelievably, Conor Ben and Harley Ben are only 4 days apart. Their birthdays were only 4 days apart. And yeah, they were born 4 days apart. So Nigel Ben been a little bit naughty there, if you'd assume. Moving over now to Germany, we're going to talk about one fight on this bill which is pretty shocking, and I'm going to explain why. Ashley Fearfane's in one corner. His record 40-8 with one draw. He takes on a guy called Pata Varduashvili. I am probably saying that awfully wrong, but anyway, the shocking part of this is it's a 10-rounder. It's for the vacant German international super welterweight title. I had no idea that Ashley Fearfane was part German. I actually asked him on WhatsApp a couple of days ago, you know, since when have you been part German? He never got back to me. He's read it as well, so I think he might be blagging that one. But anyway, he's fighting for a piece of silverware. I'm all for that. And the man in the other corner, his record's 32-14 with 2 draws. Of his 14 losses, if I'm not mistaken, I think he's been stopped 12 times. So I'm expecting a relatively easy win here for Ashley Fearfane. He will become the German international super welterweight champion, hopefully this time next week. That's a 10-rounder that is happening in Brandenburg in Germany, Brandenburg. So all the very best to Fearfane. Moving over now to another part of Germany. Nope, it's the same part of Germany. It's in Brandenburg. It's in a different arena. It's at the MBS arena. One fight to mention on here, heavyweight prospect Otto Wallin. He's not actually German, he's Swedish, but anyway, he's 18-0. He's in against a guy who's 8-3 called Gabriel Njuma. So all the very best to Otto Wallin. I want to see him in some big fights. I need to see him tested really, because he's highly ranked, I think, with one or two of the sanctioning bodies. Anyway, all the very best to Otto Wallin. Moving over now to Moscow, Russia. The return of former world champion, a man that we've had on this show who, you know, it was really interesting actually getting him on, because I remember when he came on, he barely spoke any English, but he tried his best. It was a great show, that one. We had two guys on. I think it might have been a Christmas special or something like that, but I think it may have been last year sometime, and we got two guys on that barely spoke English, and at the time those guys were Hassan and Dam, of course, the French former world champion, and this guy David Avanesian. I remember seeing him last. I think he lost to Lamont Peterson, didn't he? And also he fought Shane Mosley and beat Shane Mosley. But I like David Avanesian. He returns to the ring in Russia. His record 22-2 with one draw. He's in a 12-rounder against a guy called Alexei Evchenko, who sounds like a real tough guy and possibly a good fighter, but his record is 15-10 with one draw. All the very best to David Avanesian. I'd like to see him back. He's a really fiercely underrated fighter, I feel. A lot of people say he's very basic. I think that he's pretty good, David Avanesian. I think he's also been sparring with Gary Corcoran in the preparation for Corcoran's fight that we mentioned. It's going to be on Box Nation against Jeff Horn for the WBO at welterweight world title, December 13th. Moving over now to the Brentwood Centre in Brentwood, Essex. Who's on this bill? I think this one's going to be shown, if I'm not mistaken, on IFL TV. There's one fight to mention. David Price, 21-4. He's in a 6-rounder against Kamil Sokolowski. Now, Kamil Sokolowski, I think he's a lot better than his record suggests. His record's 4-11 with 2 draws. If I'm not mistaken, I think he got a couple of good wins recently. I'm sure he just beat a British prospect. I'm not going to click on his record, but I think it might have been Sean Turner or someone like that. But anyways, Kamil Sokolowski is quite a tough guy. It's a 6-rounder, like I say, so I think that probably suits David Price. I don't think he's, really got the gas tank for the later rounds, but, I'm looking at him on the pads this week. David Price looks really, really good on the pads, by the way, but that's just pads, and he looks really lean, really, really trim. But I'd like to see him back to some kind of decently high level. I like David Price. He's a nice guy, but nice guys don't necessarily go far in boxing. You need a lot more than just being a nice guy, of course. David Price, 21-4. All the very best to him in the Brentwood Centre. Moving over now to Leicester Arena in Leicester, United Kingdom. 1 or 2 fights in fact 3 fights. In fact, I'm going to give it 4 fights on this bill. The return of Chantel Cameron. She fought a few weeks ago on Channel 5. This one's on Channel 5 as well. It's for the vacant IBO World Female Lightweight title. She takes on a girl called Vivian Obernauf, who is 12-3. That's 10 2-minute rounds there. All the very best to Chantel Cameron. Also on that bill, Jermaine Smile, 14-6 with 2 draws. He's in a 10-rounder against undefeated Lennox Clark, 15-0 with 1 draw. That's a step up there for Clark. That should be a good fight. That one's for the vacant IBO Continental Super Middleweight title. Also on that bill, Luke the Duke Watkins, of course, the man trained by Paddy Fitzpatrick. He looked pretty good in his last fight, I suppose, at York Hall. I can't remember the guy he fought now. I think he was unbeaten as well. So I do quite like Luke Watkins. He is a good fighter. He's got a fan-friendly style. He puts his Commonwealth Cruiserweight title on the line against Mike Stafford. That's a step up again there for Luke Watkins. Mike Stafford, 16-3. That should be a decent fight. Again, this card will be shown on Channel 5. It's a Cyclones promotion bill. And the main event, Anthony Yigit, 20-0 with 1 draw. He comes over to the UK again. I think last time he come here, he might have had a fight since, but I think the last time he came here, he beat Lenny Dawes. Anyway, here he takes on Joe Hughes, who's 15-2 with 1 draw. It's for the EBU Super Lightweight title, of course, the European Super Lightweight title, the proper European belt. Anthony Yigit, a really, really good fighter. His record, as I said, 20-0 with 1 draw. I'd like to see him moved on a little bit, I suppose. Yigit's a guy that I'm quite high on. Moving over now to Madison Square Garden, New York, USA. This is a Golden Boy Promotions card. It's going to be shown on HBO in the US. I think it's Box Nation. Is it Box Nation, Mariam?
I believe so. Not 100% sure though.
It's caught you off guard a little bit, but I think it is. Who's on this bill? We've got Zachary Ochoa. I remember he last got beat by that guy Yves Ulysse or whatever his name is. But anyway, Ochoa's quite a good guy. He is 17-1. He takes on Eric Martinez, who's 14-10 with one draw. Jason Quigley's on this bill. His opponent yet to be announced. It's only an 8-rounder, but I want to see Quigley pushed on. He's a guy that I have got a lot of time for. He's a really nice guy. 13-0. That's the Irish fighter who is, living in the States. Also on this bill we have Ray Vargas, the WBC World Super Bantamweight Champion. If you can remember back to his fight with Gavin McDonnell, he really showed out there in Doncaster. So, Ray Vargas is a good fighter, 30-0. He takes on a guy called Oscar Negretti, who is 17-0. 2 undefeated fighters there. Somebody's must go. Combined record 47-0. That should be pretty good, but I don't know nothing about Negretti. I just know that Vargas is a bit of a nightmare to fight. He's very big for the weight as well. And the final fight, so we're led to believe, tops the bill here for Miguel Cotto, 41-5. He puts his WBO World Super Welterweight title on the line against Saddam Ali. Obviously, Saddam Ali's one loss, he's 25-1, but his one loss, he was stopped. I forgot who he was stopped by now.
Jesse
you might have
Vargas.
to help me out. Jesse Vargas, yeah, Jesse Vargas, not really known as a big puncher, but that was a bit of a shock upset there for Saddam Ali. And of course, Jesse Vargas since then went on to rule the world for a little bit. Saddam Ali's quite a good fighter. I mean, a lot of people are saying that. I mean, a lot of people writing him off, I suppose. One thing I know that he's obviously moving up in weight for it. Cotto's not really the biggest 154, but I think it is a slightly closer fight than some people are saying. I think it is a slightly closer fight in my honest opinion.
Really?
Yeah, I do. What's your thoughts on it?
I mean, I've said this about nearly every box that we've spoken about, but Cotto is genuinely one of my favourite fighters. I've loved him since, his old school days, and it's just such a shame, I think, he's fighting Saddam Ali, and I know you think it's going to be closer than many people think, but I just think what a way to go out, What a way to go out. I know that, no one's expecting him to go and fight the Charlos at 154 or anything, but the fact that you're going to Saddam Ali, I think, is just, such a cop-out, and I hate to say that about one of my, favourite boxing heroes, but I don't see the fight panning out that greatly. I think it'll probably be, a majority decision, a unanimous decision. But, I don't see the point of it. I don't see what it proves for Cotto. What can he go out and say that, this is my last fight. I've gone there, I've beat Saddam Ali. I just can't see the logic behind it. I'm sorry. I mean, this is just a fight that I'm so passionately against.
Yeah, I mean, Saddam Ali, like I say, I mean, the real jump out name on his resume, I suppose you'd have to say, is Jesse Vargas.
And he was knocked out by him.
Yeah, he was knocked out in round 9. Since then he's fought 3 fights. He's won them all, but I mean he hasn't really fought anybody who's like a super name. This is obviously a real step up in class. It's a bit of an anticlimax to end of a career, I suppose, for Miguel Cotto, but would it really be his last fight? I suppose we'll have to that remains to be seen. I think it probably depends on how he performs in this fight, but no, I think it's a unanimous decision win for Cotto. I really do. I don't think he stops Saddam Ali. I think you've got to go back a couple of years since Miguel Cotto's last proper stoppage as well. So we've actually asked this question on Twitter, how do the listeners see it? And the listeners have gone with Cotto to win by knockout. I think he wins on points. I'll have to get Ayaz's prediction as well, because there's only one fight really that was big enough to kind of warrant the prediction league to give the predictions on. But just for the record anyway, you're going with Cotto to win this unanimously?
Yeah, definitely. I don't see a knockout. I mean, Saddam Ali is obviously quite a bit younger than Cotto. I think he'll still have the factors of speed and age on his side, but I don't see a knockout happening. It probably will just go to a decision. Yeah,
8 years between them both, but no, I think it's. If anything, it is a big chance, I suppose, for Saddam Ali to upset the apple cart, I suppose, and kind of put his name back in it, because I remember at one stage he was, being highly touted as like the next best thing, and then when he lost that fight, he kind of ruined it for himself. But this is his second chance. Some people don't get a second chance, but he's got it here. So, yeah, I mean, hopefully it's a better fight than some people are giving it. And I think it probably will be. Hopefully it is pretty interesting. But anyway, the record's 41-5 Miguel Cotto, 25-1 Saddam Ali. All the very best to both men. May the best man win. There's not too much really to go over this weekend. The previewing has kind of gone quite quickly. And now moving over to next Wednesday, of course. And we will talk about the result on next week's show. So next Wednesday, which is Wednesday the 6th of December, it's actually happening in Dubai, in the United Arab Emirates. One fight to mention over here: former foe of Tony Bellew, Ilunga Makabu, 21-2, takes on a guy called Olan Rawaju Duradola, who's 27-4. That one's for the vacant WBC silver cruiserweight title. So both men there get a chance really to pick up a decent belt. I suppose the WBC silver titles are, it comes with a bit of a status really, that belt, to be honest. Of all the kind of regional and silver belts, that one probably is the best out of the lot. So one guy there will get the chance, well, both guys have got the chance, but one guy there will emerge the victor and will be crowned as the new champion, and hopefully will find themselves in some kind of big fight down the line at cruiserweight. Of course, with this, the World Boxing Super Series tournament going on, it's really kind of been harder really for the guys that aren't champions to get a bit of spotlight. So hopefully this sheds a bit of spotlight on one of these guys, whoever wins. All the very best to both men. And that really wraps up the previewing. We've kind of whizzed through that. Like I say, there's not too much on this week. There's not too much on, just the one card really, the one big one, the Cotto fight. Will it be his last fight? Hopefully so. Anyways, that wraps up the previewing. We've done the news, we've done the reviewing, we brought you the first world champion, of course, the reigning IBF Featherweight world champion. It's now time to speak to a man that has been a world champion a couple of times. He's a fighter that some people have forgotten, but listen, he was back with a bang last week, and we will now bring in guest number 2, the former 2-weight world champion, Mr. Devon Alexander. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the former 2-weight world champion. He's known as Alexander the Greatest, of course, Mr. Devon Alexander. Devon, welcome to the show, my man.
Thanks for having me, Joey.
Hey, it's my pleasure, Devon. It's my pleasure. So, Devon, I really just want to briefly just get in our virtual time machine, just to go back in time just a little bit to your amateur days. Now, I know that you had a great amateur career. I reminded myself recently you had 300 wins and just 10 losses, which is incredible. In the amateurs, I want to ask you, Devon, what is your best memory just before we move on to your professional career?
Well, as far as my amateur career, my best memory would be me winning the silver. I went to my first national tournament, which was the Silver Gloves, so the National Silver Gloves tournament, and I was 10 years old, 9 or 10, most likely 10 if I'm not mistaken. But I won my first national title, and it's the best feeling in the world. And I received my first little bitty amateur belt, and I thought I was on top of the world. Nobody can tell me nothing. And I went back 4 years in a row, and I won 4 more times. So the first time I won that was the best, fondest memory I had when I was amateur. Yeah, I had plenty of, highlights of my amateur career, which is me winning the Olympic Nationals when I first went when I was 15 years old, me traveling overseas, doing duels, me winning Outstanding Boxer at the PAL National Championships. I mean, just a bunch of good memories, but the one that stands out is me winning my first national title.
Excellent stuff, man. Excellent stuff. Like I say, you've had such an amazing amateur career, but now moving on to your pro career, obviously you turned pro in 2004. I'm just going to jump forward to 2009. Between those times, obviously you got a good win over DeMarcus Corley that I should mention also. In 2009 though, of course, your first world title shot came. It was against Britain's very own Junior Witter. We still haven't forgiven you for what went down that night, Devon. Talk us through your memory of that fight.
Well, when they first announced the fight that I'll be fighting for my first world title, it was the best feeling in the world because the belt that I was fighting for was the belt that I said I wanted when I first came to the boxing gym when I was 7 years old. It was Zuma Nelson. My coach Kevin had a picture of Zuma Nelson on the wall, and I pointed to it when I went to the gym. I said I wanted that belt, which was the WBC belt. It was a green belt. I used to call it the green belt. I didn't know what the WBC meant, or I used to say that. I used to say I wanted the green belt. And it's amazing that was the first belt I won. And, you know, when the fight came around and it finally was about to happen, the best feeling in the world. You know, I dedicated that fight to my dad because, you know, before he died, I wasn't able to make it to the Olympics. So I told him I was going to definitely win a world title for him, and that's what I did.
Yes, it's great to hear that. You know, there's so many emotional victories, if you like, in boxing. It's great to hear that you've got one. Obviously, you know, that fight made you the WBC World Super Lightweight Champion. In your first defence, you went straight for a unification. You took on the IBF champion Juan Urango, in which you beat him. You took his title and became the first man to stop him. He was a really tough guy until he got in the ring with you that night, and that really just put the cherry on the cake for you, I suppose. Obviously, I'm going to let you talk on that fight if you want to add anything before I move on.
Well, yeah, you know, ever since I've been a professional, I wanted to elevate my game to a point where people know I was the real deal, and I didn't want to shy away from a challenge. The challenge was brought to me and my team, and I said, would you like to do unification with Juan Urango? I said, absolutely, that's what I want to do. And the opportunity presented itself, and we took advantage of it. I felt that was the right fight at the right time. I was ready for it. I had my first world title, and it was going to be a big night for me if I was to become unification or unified champion of the world, and that's what I did. It was an amazing feeling.
Yeah, that was a truly fantastic win at the time. Now, obviously, next time out, you got a win over Kotelnik over 12 rounds. You then took on Timothy Bradley. Timothy put his WBO world title on the line. You put the WBC world title on the line. The fight was close. It was obviously stopped in the 10th round because of a headbutt. On closer inspection, it looked a little bit like it was closer to your temple than your eye, which most people thought at first. What actually happened there, Devon? You probably have got the best account of what went down in the ring that night.
The night of the fight, you can clearly see that he had three weapons in there. He had two of his hands and his head. So he had three, and I had two weapons. And one of the weapons he had a big dome. So he used that very well in that fight. I can count at least 5 times he headbutted me, and you know that was a result of a lot of things during that fight, and you know it was just a thing that happened. You know, I really, you know, would love that rematch to get that off my name, but you know we know that it can't happen because he retired. But we all know what happened. My team know what happened, and we just, you know, look past it and try to do better.
And obviously you say there, you know, that was a rematch that you would have wanted. There was a rematch clause in the contract originally, but it never actually ended up coming to fruition. What actually happened there? Why did the rematch never take place?
I couldn't tell you why the rematch didn't happen, but I would have loved to have made it, but it didn't happen. So I didn't sweat about it. He wasn't too interested either. You know, he wanted to take that sloppy win and go do something else, I guess.
And obviously after that you fought at 140 for the last time. You beat Lucas Matisse in that fight there, and obviously Lucas Matisse, even to this day, he's still a contender. He's still a man that can put people to sleep with just one punch, really. What a win that was for yourself at the time, Devon, as well.
Well, after my first loss, people were, you know, pretty upset. People were, you know, down my skills, down my level of expertise. So I had to go out and make a statement and go out there and fight a tough guy like McGee to show them I'm still a real deal and I'm still one of the best at 140. So that's why we took that challenge. That's why we took a tougher challenge after I lost. Usually people try to take a tune-up. People want to take, a couple lesser opponents, then try to go back and fight a tough fight. But not me. I wanted to go right back in there and show people that I'm still here. I ain't going nowhere, and I'm still one of the best.
And of course, after that, you made the move up to 147. After that, you took on another Argentinian. This time, of course, Mr. Marcos Maidana, Chino Maidana. Now, you beat him very convincingly over the distance. It was a shutout win for you that night. And just to add to that as well, nobody has ever fought Maidana and beat him without Maidana winning a single round. Even Floyd Mayweather couldn't do what you did in 2 fights with Maidana. That was a great win for you as well, Devon.
Absolutely. I try to tell people that I'm a skillful fighter, and people see that when they get in the ring with me. You can tell Maidana took me lightly. He thought he was just going to come in there and just outwork me, outdo me, but that didn't happen. So that was a brilliant performance that I put on. Nobody was able to dominate Maidana like I did. Nobody. That's why I tell people I believe in my skills. When I'm 100% in the ring, nobody can beat me because my skills are impeccable.
And then, of course, you took on Randall Bailey for his IBF welterweight world title. You beat him over 12 rounds unanimously. What do you remember from that fight, Devon? Another great win. So many.
That fight, as you know, he's a one punch knockout artist. So we had to be smart in that fight. We had to do what we had to do. Even though the people were saying it was a lackluster fight, I had to be smart. I had to, use my street savvy. The ring savvy to, get the victory and come out there with IBF belt, and that's what I did. The fight. There's no reason to, fight dumb. You want to fight smart and do what you have to do to get the victory.
And then after that, I remember you took on Britain's very own Lee Purdy. Obviously, Lee Purdy kind of jumped in a little bit of a I think he was a bit of a late replacement. I mean, you beat the hell out of him, really. After that fight, obviously, you took on Sean Porter, and that was where you lost your IBF world title unanimously over 12 rounds. Since then, of course, you've had 4 more fights now, but 3 more fights just before we get on to your latest one. Obviously, a win over Jesus Soto Carras and 2 losses, one against Amir Khan in December of 2014 and one most previously to your last fight against Aaron Martinez in October 2016, where in all due respect to Aaron Martinez and yourself, you shouldn't really be getting beat by fighters like that. I think that you know that. It didn't seem like the Devon that we know in those fights.
You don't have to say that. It was your statement is absolutely correct. No way in hell. There's no way in hell I'm supposed to lose to nobody like that. Not with the skill level that I am, the ring savvy that I am. There's no way I'm supposed to lose to people like I did to Aaron Martinez. No way. And, something had to be wrong. And I would love to revisit that to get that off my name as well, because people that know me knows me. That wasn't me or my best performance. So people know I'm way better than that. And I would love to get that off.
And also, Devon, obviously, just sort of going back a little bit again, obviously, the loss to Sean Porter, the loss to Amir Khan. A lot of people at that point of your career thought that, you were on the slide, you were kind of over the hill, you were past your best. I don't think it was so much that. I mean, I'm going to talk about your most recent performance in a moment, but I kind of think that, I don't know, it just didn't look really like yourself. It's almost as if your head wasn't really in there. Can you just talk about the loss to Khan and Porter?
It wasn't. It wasn't. That was around the time that I was, not really 100% of myself. I was more like 40 or 50% of myself. So they wasn't even getting the best of me when I did get in there. they got the lesser of me, and they still wasn't able to dominate me. But all in all, they still got the win. But they did not get what they were supposed to get. That my performances was definitely lackluster, and it definitely wasn't me. People that know me knows when I come in 100%, it's going to be a tough fight for anybody.
And when you say there that you was at like 40-50% of your normal self, what caused such a slip?
Well, it was the start of my thing I was going through at that time, or what I've been going through for the last couple of years. So that was the beginning of that. That was the result of that. I was doing that more and more, and you can see that.
And obviously, you've just last week returned to the ring. You'd been out of the ring for just over 2 whole years. Why the long layoff, Devon? You just touched on it a little bit there, but what made you, or what kept you out the ring for so long? And also, please walk us through this fight against Walter Castillo. Obviously, similar records on paper between you both, but the class from yourself was clear. There was a real depth in class between yourselves last Tuesday.
Well, the last 2 years have been totally. I've been through a journey that I thought I would never go through, and God has took me through a journey that I needed to go through. I was going down a path that I know I shouldn't be going down. It all started 3 years ago. It all started 3 years ago, and the addiction, the opioid addiction is definitely real, and it's taken over a lot of lives. And the 2 years that I stayed away, I wanted to correct my problem, So what I did was I went to rehab for about 8 months. I made sure that, the reason that I was off for 2 years, I wanted to make sure when I came back that I was 100% Devon Alexander. I want that person that you guys were seeing in the ring that was not giving his all, not giving his best, not giving the fans what they deserve. So that's what took me so long. That's why I stayed away. I wanted to make sure I wanted to be physically, mentally strong. I wanted to be right because this is my career, and I want my career to be like I want it to blossom. I don't want it to be failing, and when I come back, I want it to be fruitful. So that's what happened. That's where I was at for these last 2 years. I didn't want to come back too soon. I wanted to make sure. I wanted to be 100% sure, physically, mentally, and emotionally myself. And as you can see, Tuesday night, I was at.
And Devon, you said just there, a tiny little bit misunderstood what you said. You said you was in rehab for what, sorry?
I was in rehab for opioid problem.
What's that? Sorry, forgive my ignorance.
It was I was taking too many, and it was affecting my performances.
Right, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And obviously, you came back at welterweight. A lot of people, I've only seen a few clips of the fight. I'm going to hold my hands up, but a lot of people were telling me that you didn't really appear like 2 years ring rusty. You seemed really sharp in there. Obviously, you've kept the weight down. You've returned at welterweight. Will that be the weight you'll be fighting at for the foreseeable future as well, Devon?
Absolutely. People say that they didn't see any ring rush, but I think I needed a couple rounds to get my legs under me, just to, feel myself out because it's been 2 years. And then I think probably about the 5th or the 6th round, I got the feeling, real good, and I got my legs under me, and then I start to take off. But it took a few rounds to get going. But 147 is the weight I'll be at for the duration of my career, unless something drastic happen and I got to move up and fight somebody at 154.
And what are you making of the current, crop of fighters in the division right now, 147? Obviously, Keith Thurman's really excelled as a fighter now. You've got Errol Spence coming through, everybody really high on him. Kell Brook looks like he may be moving up to 154. But what do you make of the whole division right now? While you've been away, everybody's really been improving.
Well, that's good for them. but I didn't like seeing it because I'm one of the top guys in 147. Just seeing it, knowing that I'm supposed to be in those positions, I'm supposed to be getting the love that they're getting. It was just hard to watch. Happy for them, but I didn't like to see it at all because I know I got just as much skill as them or even more. So, I see myself as having a big 2018, and, I don't care who I fight or what I fight, as long as my hand is raised at the end of the night, that's all that matters.
And Devon, if I was to ask you who you believe is, maybe the top 2 or 3 fighters right now at 147, taking yourself out of it, who do you see as the top guys at 147 at the moment?
I don't consider nobody at welterweight a top guy because nobody has taken that position. They've won some credible fights, which I have. They've won some, notable fights, but nobody has taken off at the 147 division and for them to say they're the next Floyd Mayweather at the welterweight game. Nobody has done that. So there is no top 147, top 3. It's up for grabs. In my opinion, it's up for grabs because people, still any one of those guys can be beat at any day. Any day, any one of those guys can be beat because I see flaws in all the guys that they say supposedly supposed to be at the top of the 147 division. So it doesn't matter. I don't have no top.
Yeah, I mean, if I was
3 at 147.
Yeah, if I was pushed to say number 1, I think I'd probably say Thurman, just because of purely because of his wins over Porter and Garcia recently.
Yeah. That's my point. That's my point. They've had some notable wins, and I don't want to take that away from them. I had some notable wins. It's just lately they had a couple of notable wins than me, and my feeling is, any day, somebody with skill and finesse like me can beat them any day because they got flaws.
Okay, and obviously, you've returned to the ring now. You've shook the ring rust off. I don't think you will be fighting again by the end of the year. I believe you'll probably be back in 2018. How active will you be next year, Devon? Will we see you in the ring a lot more often, I'm sure?
Absolutely. Just being away from the game has rejuvenated me, re-energized me, and it has, made me see a lot of things that I've been doing in my career that I need to improve on, and it just showed me that I need to, get back in the game, get back focused, and just, take this thing over because, like I said, 147 is wide open. It's a stacked division, and I gotta be ready for whoever they come with. I'm looking to fight again in the end of January. That's the plan. So we'll see how that goes.
Okay, that was gonna be my next question. Do you know when you're next out? So it's good to hear that. So hopefully the end of January. I know that obviously you're probably gonna have a couple of, I don't want to say low-level fights, but a couple of, these fights to kind of project you back into the picture. Is there anybody, though, that you've got your eye on in the long term? Is there anybody that you'd like to fight? Is there any names that you want to throw at me that you'd like to face maybe at the back end of next year?
Yeah, I would like to fight Garcia. I think that'd be a good fight for me. He's very limited. My skills will definitely give him troubles. So I would say Garcia, Thurman would be good too. Neither one of those guys can fall to softball. It just skills me. Who's smart and ring savvy and got pop. So either one of those guys would be perfect. Either one.
But is Garcia the number 1 man at the moment?
I wouldn't say number 1. He's just somebody if they say this is him, that'll be him.
Okie dokie. And coming down to the last couple of questions now before I let you go, Devon, I want to ask you, obviously, you've had so many great moments in your career, obviously amateur and pro, the world titles, the big fights. What would you say is the best moment of your whole career so far?
The best moment of my career has to be when I won my first world title. It's the best feeling in the world. It has to be it's the most significant thing that I can do as a professional is win a world title. Nobody can take that away from me. Nobody. That's in the history books. Nobody can take that away. So that has to be the most significant thing I did in my professional career.
And also the sentimental thing that it brought to you as well. Again, as you said earlier, about your father, and you kept that promise.
Yes, that has to be the most significant thing, because it has so many meanings to that. For all the struggles, all the blood, sweat, and tears came down to that moment. So that moment was the best of my career.
And I like to ask this question to everybody that we speak to from overseas. Devon, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit here, but I know that you know your boxing. Who would you say, our listeners like to know the answer to this one, who would you say is your favourite UK fighter from any era? It can be from years ago, it can be someone who's still boxing now. Who's your favourite UK fighter?
I like Lennox Lewis and I like Joe Kawasaki.
Yeah.
I like both of those. I like both of those guys.
Yeah, those are popular.
Yeah. Those are two guys that I like to see fight, and they bring their best. So I like Kawasaki because he's a softball just like me, and I like the way he moves and throws his hands. So that's just good. And Lennox, he's always been a class act guy, and I like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I say, they're two very popular answers, two great fighters. And finally, Devon, I just want to really give you a chance to kind of say anything that you want to say just to our listeners. You may have a message for your UK fans. You may have a message about completely anything. Just take it away. Say what you like just before we let you go.
Well, to all my fans, to all the people that's listening, to all my fans in the UK, to all the people overseas, I want to thank you guys for always supporting me and continue to support me. This is the next chapter of my career, and I hope you guys continue to follow it and continue to follow my journey as I embark on another world title, which I will be getting soon. Trust and believe.
Absolutely. Okay, listen, Devon, thank you so much for giving us some of your time. We look forward to seeing you being much more active in the ring next year. Best of luck to you, and we will speak again very soon.
Thanks, Joey. Thanks for having me on.
Okay, and this wraps up episode 111 of the BoxHard Podcast. I've been your host, Joey Coastman. Mariam has been with me for the duration of the show. In case you were wondering, Devon Alexander's reason for going into rehab was because of his addiction to a painkiller called opioid, which I failed to understand a couple of times, so my bad on that. The Prediction League currently stands at myself on 14. I'm really lacking behind. Ayaz is on 16, and you, the listeners, are on 18. There's only 1 point up for grabs this weekend. It's, of course, the Cotto and our Lee fight. I'm going with Cotto on points. Ayaz has also let me know he's going with Cotto on points. You, the listeners, are going with Cotto by knockout, so best of luck to everybody involved. A big thank you to our two guests on this week's show. Another two world champions, the current IBF Featherweight King Lee Selby and the former two-weight ruler Devon Alexander. The biggest thanks of all, though, goes out to the listeners that tune in every single week. Thank you so much for that. It's really, really appreciated. Please keep following, please keep retweeting, liking, favouriting, sharing and the rest, and we'll see you all next week. Thank you so much for listening.